you believe in the existence of extraterrestrials? Tell me I'm crazy.
Mulder, you're crazy.
I can't give up. Not as long as the truth is out there. I want to believe.
Welcome to this episode of the X-Files with your hosts Mark and Becky. Hi, Becky.
Hello.
Right, so this is the X-Files, right? So we talk X-Files. However, we're not talking X-Files tonight. What are we talking, Becky? Kolchak. One of the probably the key influence on the X-Files, right? Yeah. I think things like All the President's Men and maybe JFK and Silence of the Lamb are really close. But in terms of TV, Kolchak's king when it comes to influences on the X-Files. And so we're talking Night Stalker and Night Strangler on this episode. However, this isn't the only Kolchak we're going to do. Becky and I, because we haven't got enough going on, we've decided we do need to watch all the Kolchak, the classic Kolchak. Over a few weeks, several weeks in fact. So what we're going to be doing is alternating Kolchak with the X-Files for a while, and until we've got through both the movies and the TV series with Darren McGavin. So that's the plan. I hope all you listeners are going to like that. I'm sure you will, actually, because Kolchak's kind of awesome. And I know that some of you will think, hold on, certainly Good, Bad and Odd listeners will think, hold on, you just did Kolchak about 6 months ago with Sam, and I did, I agree. But this is specifically focused on the X-Files influences, right? So it's going to be different hosts, co-hosts as well, so it's going to be kind of a different kind of take on it, I think. So, I appreciate I've already done Kolchak, but hey man, it's Kolchak! What's wrong with doing it twice? Right, okay, let's get into this. Right, Kolchak, the Night Stalker. Interesting name. There is an old 50s film called The Night Stalker. I think that's kind of a sci-fi thing, just so you know. But, I think when people hear Night Stalker, they kind of think of this, right? It just tends to be this. This first aired on January the 11th, 1972, on ABC. I think it aired in the UK not long after it, because I do remember seeing this at a fairly young age. So it must have been early 70s when it aired in this country too. So it's Darren McGavin, right? Darren McGavin. I mean, he's pretty good in everything. What's your thoughts on Darren McGavin as an actor? Do you remember him for anything else?
I know his face. I'm sure I've kind of seen him in things, but I couldn't place him in anything else.
Oh, okay. Kolchak's the main one for me. Also, he's the father in a great Christmas film called A Christmas Story. He's very funny in that. If you haven't seen it, watch it at Christmas. You'll enjoy it. You'll dig it. He's also in a quite weird little sci-fi sort of mini-series called The Martian Chronicles. He's a fair bit older in that, because that's like the 80s. Rock Hudson's in it as well. Oh, wow. And it's an interesting sort of set of mini stories about colonisation of Mars that isn't what I'm describing. Sounds very technical and that, but it's not like that at all. It's about Martians do exist, but they have like psychic influences on the humans and stuff like that. It's quite kind of a cool little series, but Darren McGavin's in that as well as one of the early settlers. Who's been established there for a while. Anyway, let's get back to him in this. Okay, this was based on what was an unpublished novel by a guy that was a journalist in Las Vegas called Jeff Rice. It was called The Kolchak Papers. He knew Vegas, and apparently a lot of the characters in that book, which I've never read this book, are based on people he knew in Vegas, and it sounds a kind of an interesting one. However, the screenplay was written by Richard Matheson, the great Richard Matheson, right? He's written some great books, right? I Am Legend. Shrinking Man, stuff like that. And he's done some great screenplays. In fact, he's done some great screenplays for Hammer, bizarrely, that I just love, actually. Directed by a director called John Llewellyn Moxey. Darren McGavin's the star in this, but you also get quite a good turn from Simon Oakland in this as his editor Vincenzo. I kind of enjoyed the back and forth between those two. And the other sort of secondary character that is in it a fair bit is an actress called Carol Lynn Lee, who plays a character called Gail Foster. Right, so it all begins with an attack, doesn't it? If I remember rightly.
I thought it began with him relaying everything.
Yeah, he starts.
It's his tape recorder.
Yeah, we're getting a monologue from Kolchak. Now, how do you usually feel about monologues? Are you happy with monologues usually?
Yeah, and I think because this is such a kind of character study, in regards to Kolchak, it was a nice way of introducing it, and also because of his role as a reporter, it just kind of created that backlog. And if we're talking about influences or contemporary shows at the time, it really kind of reminded me of Perry Mason, like Columbo.
Yeah,
type,
very
like kind of court detective. I know it's a bit different with the reporting aspect, but I really kind of liked those shows, and it was the same type of vein for me with the monologue. Yeah,
I think that's a good catch. The other thing is this monologuing is very purple prose kind of monologuing, isn't it? It's kind of flowery in places. She was walking home, but she never knew she wasn't going to make it. It was that kind of stuff, right? Now that comes up a lot in the X-Files. It's not quite like that. It's more sort of philosophical, but we get quite a lot of scenes of Scully writing stuff, and indeed Mulder talking about stuff in a very kind of flowery way, which I think is comes from Kolchak, is my opinion. They're kind of riffing on Kolchak somewhat. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
He's in a little dingy motel room. He's basically listening to himself talking on a tape recorder while he's looking at a notepad, right? And he's working on a book in essence, right? But then he starts talking about the first murder, and it's basically a girl walking through Vegas, like I think he says 2:30 in the morning or something like that. She's wearing hot pants, awesome, so 70s. Down the Vegas Strip, but this grandpa kind of groups. Now, these attacks are pretty strong, aren't they? Considering this is a TV movie. Yeah,
I was surprised about that. And I know the version I watched wasn't, in terms of the film stock, it was very grainy. So I need to get this on DVD. I'm not sure if it's on Blu-ray. I guess it's not.
I don't think it's on Blu-ray. I think even if you got it on Blu-ray, the quality would still be TV quality. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure it's film. It might be on film, so it's possible to scrub up really well if it is film, but I'm not sure. What always surprises me is they're like slight. I'm sorry, they're not slight. They're average women, but the guy's big, so it's kind of quite ominous. He's throwing them about and everything.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at this point we're not kind of too sure of the supernatural aspect. It just looks like, a really strong guy. And like you say, he's giving it some. It's quite violent. Yeah,
it is. He's throwing them about. And also we kind of see the aftermath of this in the dustman kind of finds a body in a dustbin, right? And her neck's been bitten and stuff like that. Now, Kolchak says he's been called back because no one else will take the case or something like that. He's coming back from Mexico, it looks like. He's got he's got a straw hat. Not his usual straw hat, because he wears kind of a raffia kind of hat, doesn't he? Or a white material. But he's got a straw hat, and he's back from vacation. It's his first vacation he's had in 2 years, and they called him back for this case. When he gets there, he's shouting at Vincenzo. And he's saying, why have you got, why? Basically, him and Vincenzo have a dysfunctional family kind of feel. They just shout at each other, right? And at one point, Vincenzo's shouting at Kolchak, and Kolchak kind of smiles and says, "Vincenzo, you're beautiful when you're angry." and he's quite antagonistic to the rest of the office too. He's kind of funny. As he walks in the office, he says, "Good morning, slaves," and there's plenty of that with Kolchak. And also he's got this. It turns out that he knows a woman who knows the first girl that died, who's this woman, Gail Foster. Now, any idea what work she does?
Well, not at this point, because he keeps referring to her working at night, doesn't he?
And she's hanging around the casino in like a proper posh frock, right?
Yeah.
So I assume she's an escort. And I think in the book she's a prostitute, but obviously they're not going to do that in this. But although I could be wrong. But she said, "Oh, there's the guy," and walked off at one point when she stood to Kolchak in a casino. It's like, oh, okay, don't know. And I guess this is the kind of underbelly. These characters are the underbelly of Vegas, right? That's how it kind of feels. That woman's been in a lot of TV. She's definitely turned up in stuff like Columbo and probably Perry Mason. But I can't specifically place her in anything specific, but I know I've seen her in lots of different early 70s American TV. The second murder? I think it's the second murder. It involves a girl in an expanse of sand, right, with no steps coming towards it. That was pretty weird, right? Yeah,
that was really well done, actually. No kind of special effects really or anything like that. And I think it's at this point that Kolchak refers to, was she literally thrown? And obviously we've seen the strength of the perpetrator. So that was a really nice little scene and very, very X-Files, I thought.
Indeed. And also, like, Kolchak's looking around, noting there's no print, and Sheriff's, who was played by an actor called Claude Akins, who's pretty awesome in this. He turns up in a lot of early 70s TV stuff. I always associate him with stuff about truck driving, right? Or sheriffs. And in this one, he's a sheriff. And I'm pretty sure in his later life, he did turn up in things something like the Dukes of Hazzard as well, in this kind of role. He doesn't say anything, but this trooper, nobody trooper, says, notes this woman's wounds on her neck and says she's lost a lot of blood, but there's no blood here. There's none in the sand. And like, Kolchak's looking around. I did actually forget to mention the opening credits are pretty awesome because they're from the view of the dead woman having her own autopsy.
Yes,
that's pretty amazing, right? Pretty interesting way of doing it. Because you're basically putting the audience in an autopsy, but they're not going to see anything graphic from that angle.
No, I thought it was really quite creative, actually. Good call. I forgot about that completely. But the opening credits and then the way that it opens with Kolchak looking very dishevelled, just coming back to a point about this kind of being the underbelly of Vegas. He's we see from the beginning that something obviously isn't right and things haven't gone to plan. So it's a really interesting insight into his character and how these events have unfolded, because we know it's kind of leading up to something.
Yeah. So there's also, Kolchak seems to be plugged into loads of people too. He is plugged into the underbelly. He's constantly getting calls or people sort of getting in touch with him to give him more info, right? And he's got lots of people looking out for him. So, I mean, doesn't he go to a hospital at one point and he's kind of knows one of the doctors there, and he's making jokes about, I'm getting your kids through college or something like that, what are you going to give me for my money and all this kind of stuff.
And gives them treats and bribes them. And I love at one point he says something to, the tune of, I despise doing research. He actually pays people. He's a reporter and he pays people to do the research for him, which I loved. Yeah,
it's comedy gold. The other thing is, the next thing he finds out, blood has been stolen from an hospital. Someone's broken into a hospital and stolen loads of different types of blood. And he finds that kind of intriguing. And then we get to the coroner's report of the first murder, or maybe the second, or one of them anyway. I think it's the coroner we see from the opening credits, so I'm going to assume it's the first murder. And the coroner's actually played by the guy that played Frank Burns in the long-running MASH TV show. He's pretty good in this, because, I mean, in that series, Frank Burns is an idiot. He's a pompous idiot. In this he was same actor, but he did come across as like a competent surgeon, you know, in the little bit he had. He was talking factually, and it was pretty good, you know, very short turn. And he talks about the wound on the throat being a bit like a dog bite, and then he mentions human saliva was in it. So I was like, whoa, it all kicks off then, didn't it? And Kolchak then pipes up, you know, are you saying... And then the sheriff, Claude Aiken, says, you're here under suffrage, Kolchak. Kolchak goes, you mean sufferance? Nice. And then we get constant, like, back to and fro, and Kolchak going back to the office, giving his editor copy, and Vincenzo blowing up, right? Just shouting at him again. So, what is it? You vampire? You said vampire. And he said, no, I didn't. He says, in the headline it says vampire stalks Vegas. He goes, yeah, but it's in the words. The story, you know, you read the story, it makes it clear. You know, it's like, yeah, all right, you're trying to get pulled one over on it then. And there's quite a lot of murders in this. There's like dogs attacking this guy, and he kidnaps some woman who goes missing. There's an attack on a girl outside her front door, I believe, and her parents are kind of grieving over this corpse. Kolchak rocks up and starts making jokes, like, you know, he goes, looks like Bele Lugosi struck again. And the coppers goes, knock it off, that's their daughter, this kind of things. There's all this. Basically, they do get like an identikit of the, you know, a police artist sketch of the killer, right? And he looks well creepy. Yeah. And there's a great sequence in this where the killer himself sees himself on the paper in a casino. Do you remember this bit?
Yes.
He just walks through, but we get him from behind. It's a lot of handheld in this, right? Kind of cool. But we get the reactions of people walking past him or towards him, and it's pretty good, isn't it? They're like all a bit mortified. This guy's about 7 foot tall or something. He's ridiculously tall, and he's got grey skin and like red eyes. It's like, whoa. Well, they're not red, they're black, but they're red and bloodshot kind of thing. So he's kind of been ID'd. And as I say, at one point, this woman's got a big old Doberman, right? And he just kills the dog straight away, and then grabs the woman. And so she's gone missing, so they think she's been killed, but they don't know, right? I also like, there's some really nice stuff where back and forth between Vincenzo and Kolchak, right? They're just shouting. They're giving each other plenty of trouble. I like this vibe. Any thoughts on it?
I love their relationship, and I think Vincenzo is just an amazing character, and I'm so glad that they brought him back in the second film when we talk about that, because I think they both really fill those shoes. I think I prefer the second film even more than this one, which I was surprised by.
So was I, you know, because I watched both of them not long ago, and my feelings on the second one was, yeah, it's just a weaker retread of the first, but man, I enjoyed it quite a bit more this time, and I felt there was slightly more comedy in it and to and fro-ing, and what I felt was padding when I watched it, say 6 months ago, I felt was really fun. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that movie. But yeah, there's a slightly more serious. I mean, they're just shouting at each other a lot, right? Really angry at each other. I mean, but Kolchak gives this great speech at one point in this. He says, "This is news, Vincenzo, news. We are a newspaper. We print news." It's such a great speech. So Kolchak's kind of goofing around with this Gal Foster woman. She's kind of a nice enough character, right? He keeps saying to her, "You got to stop working nights." She's going, "Oh, are you going to keep me?" and all this. Anyway, he's sitting around wondering what to do, and she gives him this book, this set of books. She's gone to the library. She's obviously a nice lady. She thinks a lot of him. She's gone to the library and got him a whole set of books about vampires, and he starts reading through, and we're getting a bit of the old vampire lore read out with Kolchak's voice. Pretty cool stuff, right? Pretty cool. Yeah. And there's some nice direction here. As Kolchak's reading aloud about vampires, we see a shot of the killer in a hospital walking through, But then it kind of all kicks off, and orderlies start trying to stop him, and he's throwing them about. He throws one orderly through a window with one arm, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the cutting between the actual actor as the vampire and the stuntman as the vampire was a bit obvious. Do you think?
Yeah, but I can kind of forgive that. I mean, you can tell this is a lower budget production, obviously, but the creative turns, like you've already mentioned, some of the handheld camera work and that kind of opening shot, I thought were really creative. The shots in regards to the budget, and I thought that was nice, and it felt quite. I think for the 70s, this must have been quite new and fresh and quite edgy, quite a kind of underground type of film. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's how it feels.
I think if you take a poll of any TV movie, pretty much everyone, I mean, not above a certain age will just say, oh yeah, The Night Stalker. Because everyone kind of knows this is a TV movie. It's like the go-to for TV movies, this particular film. And I think it's because it was so different. It caused a right old stir. The other thing is, when this was made, TVs were a lot smaller. So, cut into action men, cut into stunt men wasn't, you didn't have to match them so much. So there was all that. However, there is quite a spectacular action sequence when the vampire gets outside the hospital. We get police cars pulling up, and we see an actual a police bike skid. He comes off the bike and skids it across the floor, and it almost hits one of the other cops. They obviously didn't have the same kind of health and safety issues in the early 70s as they did now. So there's plenty of all that. And then there's another press conference, and they say the FBI. Oh, I didn't mention he's got an FBI guy called Bernie who's kind of helping him out. Who's on his side, right? He's like one of the persons in authority is on Kolchak's side, right? Kolchak buys him beer and he kind of tells him stuff, and Kolchak says, can you check out the loony bins in the area for anyone who thought they were like Count Dracula and all this? Because he thinks he's a maniac who thinks he's a vampire, right? That's the kind of vibe. Now that actor, this has got a bit of an X-Files tie, a bit, right? That actor's an actor called Ralph Meeker. Have you seen him in anything else?
Again, a lot of people in this I kind of know the faces, but I couldn't tell you where from.
No, he's not been in that much, but there is one of my favourite noirs. In fact, probably my favourite noir has him as the lead character. He plays Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer in a film called Kiss Me Deadly, which is a great noir, and I think qualifies as one of the possible inspirations for the X-Files, because it's about potentially a government conspiracy about something in a box that could be atomic secrets, or could be this, that could be that. And he's been sent to, he's trying to investigate it, but he's just a hard-boiled detective. But he does a really good turn in it. So I'd like us to cover that at some point when we're going through like things that inspired the X-Files, but way down the list, I'd say. He was also the only other thing I can think of him off the top of my head. He played the sergeant that was helping Lee Marvin in The Dirty Dozen.
Right.
But other than that, I just wanted to mention, because of the X-Files connection. Just wanted to mention him. A pretty good turn for him as well. Then anyway, the next press conference, they start saying, we've got the guy, he's Scorsese, isn't it? And they recognise that he was born, he must be over 70 now, and they have a kind of a really cool history that sounds really intriguing, because he made his way to London during the Blitz. He was like a professor of haematology, and they found in his house afterwards he'd installed like tubs and like facilities that sounded like the sort of facilities you have in an abattoir. It sounded really dodgy, didn't it?
Yeah, and I love that, the way that they transitioned from the kind of psychological description or kind of theory that this killer, just believed himself to be a vampire to it actually being a vampire. It was really interesting in the way that obviously Kolchak was so invested in the fact that this was, because he's seen him up front, hasn't he? He's he has an altercation with him. But that was really interesting and really laid the groundwork in terms of the Mulder aspect, in which Kolchak's kind of telling everybody, no, this is real, and everyone's like, no.
Yeah. It's well, at first he's like, I'm not sure what Kolchak thinks at one point. He kind of says, this guy thinks he's a vampire, so you got to treat him like a vampire. That's his kind of line. But then we briefly see him talk to Elisha Cook Jr., who's always like a little ratty guy in these kind of films, a snitch, or he's an informant called Mickey. I think they're at the blackjack tables, and Kolchak's saying, can you check all the real estate agents for any guy that looks like this? Because they got the picture. And he's like, hold on, Kolchak. Let me just lose my last dollar here. He goes, Mickey, have you ever thought about winning? It's all that. Which, again, is a nice little touch for a journalist. It seems like a great idea that maybe the cops overlooked. Maybe not, I don't know. But then we get another chase of the vampire. He gets kind of cornered, and loads of police are chasing him. He goes into a pool at one point, a swimming pool, right? And cops jump in, they drag him out, they think they've got him, but he fights them all off. They're unloading guns and shotguns into him, and we see the bullets hitting, and he's still running.
And I love how Kolchak's just taking photos.
He's just taking photos. That's all he ever does, Kolchak, photos. It's very funny. He's not an action guy, is he? He's
really not. But no, I mean, he gets into it. But like you said, even though he doesn't necessarily believe that it is obviously a vampire at the beginning, he's even quite dismissive when Gale gives him the vampire book, because he's reading through it, isn't he?
He's very cynical about it, isn't he? Yeah. He don't believe it.
But he seems open-minded, I was going to say, it more so than the other people, and he is putting everything together. And coming back to your point about him and Vincenzo, I think they really do have a Mulder and Scully relationship, because Vincenzo is the one, in obviously a slightly different way, he's a complete opposite of Scully, and he's so emotional and
shouty.
He's the one not necessarily always just disbelieving, but dragging him back to the real world and saying, you can't release this. The government will be involved.
We'll look stupid if we'll
lose our jobs. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? That was a really interesting dynamic in terms of their relationship, I thought.
Yeah. They and then basically the committee sort of have another meeting, and Kolchak just sits at the back and he says, "Look, guys, if you wanna find this guy, I know what you got to do." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And he says, "You got to issue every officer one of these." And pulls out a big cross, and he goes, "Then you got to get one of these and one of these, and it's a stake and a hammer and all this business." And they're saying, "What are you trying to say, Kolchak?" He goes, "Guys, we're dealing with a real live vampire." He's got a big shit-eating grin about it. And it's like, yeah, it's a vampire now. And he's very gleeful about it. And they cut a deal, don't they? They say, yeah, okay, we're going to do what you say. If you help us out, you get exclusive rights. Once the blanket on news is lifted. But if you're wrong, you got 12 hours to leave town. And he goes, yeah, I'm right. So, yeah, it's kind of like that, right? And then he's all excited because he thinks he's going to go back to the Big Apple, right? He wants to go back to New York. This gets me. He thinks Vegas is like a small town, and he wants to get back to New York, right? And I never thought of Vegas like that, but there you go. Kolchak does. He wants to get on the big time, he says. And then he gets into his car. And it's at night, and something sits up behind him, and he's kind of terrified and tries to jump out. But it turns out it's Elisha Court Jr. fell asleep in the back of his car. It's like, what are you doing in the back of here? You know, all this. But Elisha Court Jr. has found the address of a guy that, has dealt with real. So he's basically tracked him down, right? Nice. Kolchak, I think he tells Bernie, but asks him to give him an hour or something, and he goes to the address, and it seems to be deserted, and we get some proper Kolchak as a comedy burglar in this. He's kind of knocking things over and stumbling through this house. He finds a drawer with disguises, like a moustache, because we do see a car dealer earlier saying, yeah, this guy had a moustache, otherwise he looked the same, all that. He finds loads of bottles of blood in the fridge. And we got some cool music and handheld shooting here, right? It's really nice. Really nice. Very tense, I thought. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, definitely. Again, I watched this with my nan. She was terrified, bless her. But I think also I love the way that he goes into these situations completely unarmed and telling people
pretty much
completely.
Right.
It's the way he's just like, give me an hour, and he does it again in the next one. Give me 30 minutes. Like you could be dead by then.
I mean, he took a cross. I mean, we should be grateful about that, right? Then he finds the girl, and this is really an interesting twist on the old vampire. Basically, he's tied up the girl in a bed. She's, spread eagled on the bed, with the tied at the wrists and the ankles. She's got a plaster over her neck, plaster over her mouth, and he's basically given her blood so he could drink it out of her again. Pretty grim.
It is, and just coming back as well to your comments about the title, I mean, originally, the Night Stalker always makes me think of Richard Ramirez.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think,
I've forgotten about that, yeah, good point.
That was the first thing I kind of thought of when I came to this, and I think that really informed the kind of darker aspects of it for me.
Oh, yeah, I can see why, yeah. Anyway, he talks to the woman, and then he hears someone coming in, right? So it's like, he puts the thing back over her mouth, but it won't stick, so he goes, just lay there. It won't stick, just lay there. And, goes and hides in a cupboard, and we get a...
As you do.
Yeah. We get some shots of Skorzeny looking around. Skorzeny goes in and looks over her, but then he leaves, and then Kolchak comes back out. But then we see Skorzeny kind of looking suspicious and turn around, and the handle starts to turn. She moves, so the thing, the gag falls off of her face. It's like, but Kolchak just scurries back to his cupboard, and he's just. And he doesn't know what's happening. It's great bit of tension here. He's just in that. We always do is see Kolchak in the cupboard trying to listen. So we don't know what's going to happen. And then what happens? You say.
And then basically the cupboard door, whatever it's called, opens and the vampire drags him out.
Yeah, and it's proper scary. It's like a jump scare, right?
It is. And then we get that wonderful shot of
Kolchak.
Really. The iconic shot with the cross, don't we?
Yeah, we get him he's trying to get the vampire back, and then he stumbles or something, and he looks around and the vampire's gone, but he don't know where he is in the house.
Before that, it made me laugh. He has the cross, and he just kind of making the vampire kind of walk backwards towards the girl, and I'm thinking he could turn around and kill her, use her as bait, anything. Yeah. It's the way Kolchak just kind of puts himself first makes me laugh.
But then it's interesting because there's some great string tension music, a bit psycho-y kind of music.
Apparently the music at the end here, some of it was from Dark Shadows.
Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Apparently, yeah, some of it.
The music reminded me a bit of Psycho. Actually, I should mention, while we're on to Psycho, Simon Oakland's the psychiatrist at the very end of Psycho.
Yes.
Right, cool. Okay. In case anyone didn't know, I thought I'd mention it. And then it goes completely silent, and then Kolchak slowly walking down the stairs, and then we see the vampire at the top of the top of a staircase across the landing from him, and he's just growling like a beast, and that's the only sound we get, right? Just really good, really like that. What do you think?
A lot of brilliant, and I think this really. Kind of channeled, previous vampire films. I think a lot of the Hammer stuff in particular.
Yeah. The ending's very Hammer-ish. It reminded me a lot of Horror Dracula, the first Dracula Hammer film. When they kind of get him, because he's about to, basically the vampire gets Kolchak, doesn't he? He drops the cross, and the vampire's just about to bite him, and Bernie bursts in. And starts hitting him, and the vampire's fighting him, and he gets shot, and that doesn't work. But then I think Kolchak pulls the blind down, and the sun comes in.
Yep.
So that's very Horror Dracula, and Bernie's holding him back with a cross, and basically they got him on the stairs, and they should have just left him there, right? They had him weak, they didn't need to do that, but Kolchak gets a stake and starts pounding it in his chest. And just as he finished, the sheriff and some men turn up, right? It's like, whoa.
witnessing him murdering a man.
Yeah, he lets out a weird scream, the vampire, as it happens too, as well. It's kind of weird. And then the next shot we see, maybe not the next shot, but certainly we see then Kolchak being super happy because like he's got this fantastic story, right? And like he goes into Vincenzo's looking a bit down in the mouth. He says, "Yeah, great reporting, Cole. You're a great reporter." But basically, he says you got to go upstairs or something. I don't know, something like that. And it turns out they've double crossed him. Right? They're saying, "We saw you pounding a stake into an innocent man we only wanted for questioning into his chest." You go, and there's a warrant for your murder unless you leave town and all this. So basically, they double crossed him. He loses his job. Gal's been in a very weird turn. Gal was forced to lose town because she was undesirable, as the DA put it, and so she was forced to leave town by some other mechanism. And then it's just Kolchak leaving, right? And he mentions that he's spent all his money trying to find her, and he hasn't been able to find her. So it's a bit weird, that is. And he mentions he hasn't had a decent night's sleep, and basically it ends with him in the hotel room from the beginning, finishing the book, as it were. And it's like, yeah, you can believe in this if you want. You won't find anyone to confirm it in Vegas. They've all either left town or they're strangely silent. It's all this business. And it ends with the line, "Try and tell yourself it couldn't happen here."
Yeah.
Pretty great, right? Pretty great.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And
so, again, also known as, the truth is out there, I want to believe kind of thing.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of that. I really, I mean, 75 minutes. It just whizzes by. And we get McGavin is just great in this. This character, I mean, it was reasonably well written, but I think Darren McGavin just brought so much to this, right? And I think the casting was really good throughout. Yeah, no, I think everybody was brilliant. We have, do we have David Carradine in this one as well? No.
Is that the next one?
John Carradine, and he's in the next one.
John Carradine.
Yeah. David Carradine's not that. No, he's not in this. Any other thoughts about it?
I'm getting mixed up already.
Yeah, we'll get to the next one before you get even more mixed up. Don't worry.
I think, like you say, it's brilliant writing. I thought it was really interesting when I was just doing a bit of reading up about it that originally Richard Matheson apparently wanted the Kolchak character to be dressed in Bermuda shorts and a Hawaiian shirt.
Bit like Jacoby from X-Files, from Twin Peaks, right?
Right. Both knackered. I think it was actually Magavin that, really, obviously, I could see why he wouldn't want to wear that that ensemble. And it was his idea to kind of bring in the 50s style suit because and again, this ties into the disheveled appearance and the way, his look turns in the film, that Kolchak had been fired from a New York newspaper years before, and he hasn't bought a new suit since, which I thought was a really nice touch and really, really does kind of play into the character that McGavin creates.
Indeed. It's I mean, this is just a fun one. I really enjoy this one. I could watch it again and again and again, to be honest. It like I say, it had a real impact at the time. I remember talking about it at school and stuff like that. And it was like, wow, did you see that last night? And it was on late, but all the kids kind of stayed up to watch. Well, this was before video. I'm sorry, I'm sounding really old, right? This was just after the Ark, right? So all the kids at school kind of stayed up to watch it and stuff like that. So yeah, it was fun. I like scores in here as well. I thought it was conveyed quite well. A bit thankless task for the actor, really, because he didn't get any dialogue or anything. This vampire's a snarling thing, right? He must be fairly articulate though, if he was professor of haematology in London. But he's just turned into a snarling thing for this. I thought that was interesting. I have a feeling it kind of informed the later Salem's Lot movie somewhat.
Yes.
this house,
I
the
can
house
definitely
is
see
a
that.
touch of the Marsden house about it, right? It's definitely a touch of that. I can kind of see that. It would have. Apparently, Chris Carter did want Kolchak to appear as Kolchak in the X-Files at some point, though I think McGavin refused to appear as Kolchak because, like, he'd left the character behind, you know. But he did appear in the X-Files eventually as a character called Arthur Dowles, which we'll get to at some point in the X-Files. And Arthur Dowles, the character of Arthur Dowles, is referred to as the father of the X-Files. That's his like moniker. So he's kind of. It's nice that he had that tie-in, you know. Being cool to see him in that as well. Okay, should we rate this one? What would you give this one out of 10?
I think I'd have to give this one a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think as it stands, I agree. Yeah, I haven't really got. There's nothing I can say that I don't think it can be improved. It's that kind of thing, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, and I think it was incredibly influential, not only on the X-Files, like you say, but on so many other shows like the X-Files that have also potentially influenced that. But I think this really kind of permeated so much of, you know, popular culture. And I think as well, just touching on what we said about the camera work and how creative it was so different, as you've also hinted at. But the tension we've alluded to in the atmosphere, to have that kind of mainstream horror on television, I think would have also been really quite something. So yeah, cool. Definitely be a 10 for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, this is my favourite TV movie.
Ever?
Yeah. There's no TV movies I like better. There's some that come close, but this is my favourite TV movie. So just want to say that. Okay, I'll tell you what, let's have a little musical interlude and move straight on to the Night Strangler. Okay, so we're back for the Night Strangler. So this was, again, another TV movie, put on it, I think, a year after the Night Stalker. Let me check my times. Yep, almost a year to the day after the first one. It was actually January the 16th, 1973, where the Night Stalker was January the 11th, 1972. So 1 year straight after. Almost as popular as the first movie. Very strong ratings. And basically, this was strong enough for them to decide they wanted to order up a TV series following up on this. Though originally they just planned another film after this, which I did have the details. I haven't got them with me, but I did have the details about that film. But they actually transitioned it into a TV series of 20 episodes, and one of which was a direct sequel to The Night Stalker. And it's a very, very strong episode, that one. But we'll come to that because we're going to be doing it at some point, right? Soon. So this one was written by Richard Matheson again. Interesting one here because I believe he integrated some of the elements of the book, the Night Stalker book, into this. For example, apparently Margaret Hamilton's character in this, you know, as the professor of anthropology, I think, was actually in the Night Stalker book. So that was kind of interesting, but they used that character in this instead. How about that?
I think I say Professor of Sex Pop then.
Yeah. We'll come to that. I've got some things to say about that. So he's not in Vegas anymore, but he's now in Seattle, right? And it turns out Vincenzo's also in Seattle. Is Vincenzo in this drinking milk or something?
Yeah. Why is it all the TV shows you watch everybody drinks milk?
It's because ulcers. That's what it is. Oh, yeah, because Pete in Twin Peaks drinks milk, doesn't he? Kolchak's trying to tell people about his vampire story in a bar, and like no one's listening. So he's like one of those pub bores who you think is just bullshitting, right? It's like all this. But he managed. Vincenzo hires him because I think he knows he's a good reporter. They just don't get on, right?
Yeah, and I think he also feels responsible as well for what happened to him as well.
Yeah, there is definitely
a bit of guilt
there. And it turns out exotic dancers. Now, I suspect in the original script these were strippers, but they converted it to like belly dancers, right? I have to say I did enjoy all the belly dancing stuff in this. It was kind of cool. And it basically finds out that these dancers strangled, they have their necks crushed, but they're drained of a few ounces of blood. I still, to this day, do not know how they know that a few ounces of blood were drained, unless it was at a hole, and how they know it's a few ounces. You know, it's like...
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, right, it's one of those. And there's also, apparently, around the wounds or around the necks, there's traces of rotting flesh. Right, so we're getting proper, yeah. Right. Now, Kolchak in this meets a whole series of rather good characters. One of the things I liked about this film is it was rather he bumped into some rather fun characters. Now, the version I saw was an hour and a half, but apparently when it originally aired, it was 74 minutes. So they've obviously beefed it up for some reason with extra scenes. I couldn't really tell, other than some of them went on a bit. What about you?
It's interesting you say that because I know you mentioned when we talked about the first film that you originally, when you watched it, or recently, you felt like some of the scenes were padding, but I really didn't. The whole kind of pace of the film was great, and I was completely entertained, hooked, whatever you want to call it, all the way through.
Yeah, I thought, you know what, like last time I watched it, I felt it was a little padded, but this time not at all. I just enjoyed it. The scripting was great. There was some great scripting. As we already mentioned, Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch of the West from Wizard of Oz, turns up as an old professor of anthropology that Kolchak goes and sees, and he starts talking about, is there such a way of keeping your energy up as you get old? And I think she says something like, if there was, I'd be an 80-year-old sex pot. Well, this character, I bet if she was a girl back in the day, right? Wow. And there's all this kind of stuff, and we see John Carradine, as you mentioned in the last segment. He's in this as like the big chief editor. Very striking looking man, right? Still got his full charisma. I mean, he was Dracula back in the day in Universal, in some of the later Universal films like House of Frankenstein. A lot of charisma this guy's got, and obviously the father of David Carradine. Really laying into Kolchak, but Kolchak's giving it all back as well. At one point he says something like, he's talking down to Kolchak, and Kolchak's saying, I'm looking into an elixir of life to keep you young. Not that you'd be interested. Something like that. And also, he argues with everyone in this, doesn't he? Kolchak argues with everyone. The police chief is like telling him off for what he's been up to, and he says, I've been a reporter for 15 years, and the police chief says, I've been a policeman for 30. And Kolchak's like, well, maybe it's time you retired. It's like, he don't care, does he? And it was also arguing with everyone at the office. Do you notice how antagonistic some of the other staff were? Not just Vincenzo. There's a lady there who literally goes to him at one point. He just rips her copy up in a terror. It's like, wow, he don't care. It was fun. It was a real fun. One thing I did notice that I hadn't noticed quite so much last time, I think, when I watched it, was how strong some of the women characters were. It was an interesting cross-section of female characters in this. Do you think?
Oh, yeah, completely. I mean, going back to the first film, it was all kind of centered on Gail's character, and there seemed to be an uneasy kind of alliance there in a way that kind of reminded me of Breakfast at Tiffany's, where with the source material they really couldn't go into the role and the actual character. Do you know what I mean? So it was an uneasy one, like you say. We saw her in some kind of gambling joint, a casino, and it didn't kind of say one way or another. It just hinted at, and it was a really, not uneasy is probably the wrong word, but it was kind of treading that line. It wouldn't kind of say anything, it wouldn't confirm it. So it was a really strange depiction of her character. And though I thought it was interesting at the end, like you say, the way that she was undesirable and she was told to leave, I thought that was a really interesting ending. But in this, we get all sorts of stuff.
Well, we get.
I love the fact we get, like, one exotic dancer is also a psychology student, and she's very kind of adamant about making that point.
And a character name is Louise Harper. The actress is, I don't know how to say this exactly, but it's Joanne Flug, I think, because it's spelled P-F-L-U-G. It's kind of difficult. Really good. She had a Mary Tyler Moore kind of vibe about her, and she was really good in this. I thought she was a really interesting character. And she was a great belly dancer, actually. I was quite impressed. That actress could really deliver. And at one point, Kolchak says something like, her hips moved even faster than her lips, or something like that, because she did talk a lot, didn't she? But
again, that sets up some really funny kind of egotistical and quite misogynistic in a way, dialogue, and from him and his persona, because he's a bit of a womanizer, isn't he?
He's a bit of a chauvinist, but in a charming way. That sounds bad, doesn't it? I'm sounding bad here. I'm sounding like a chauvinist as well, but
their characters really played off that, I think, and it made the female characters even stronger because of the tone that he took with it, which was interesting.
They didn't put up with his shit, did they? Really?
No, not at all. And on top of the actual dancing, some of the outfits they wore in the club, I love the outfits and that, but also that character, Louise Harper, we talked about this off air, but basically she's wearing some kind of, what did I call it, like a picnic hamper?
She's wearing a very wide gingham like suit and a big baggy them like 70s hats with like a massive like headspace to put a pack a lot of hair in if you want to, a proper Chelsea girl kind of look, kind of stuff like that. Man, I'm showing my age again. But let's talk about some of the other female characters. There was Charisma Beauty. What about that one? Now, she was really interesting because she was kind of a bubblehead, because she was like, she was like Monroe kind of breathy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And acting a bit of a bimbo kind of thing, but she was in a relationship with another woman who was called Wilma, who's like this big butch woman, and Kolchak says a few times, can your husband let me through? And he's like just insulting Wilma left, right, centre. Well, Wilma's like scowling at him. So there was that interesting stuff. And she, there was one point that I really thought, whoa. And every time I see it, it's like, whoa. Kolchak's going, old Charisma Beauty's dancing, the belly dancing. He says something like, slay 'em, Charisma. And she says, why would I do that? I like them. All these blokes watching her, it's like, whoa, I know what sort of girl this is. But it was kind of interesting, wasn't it? It was. It's almost like, this is so misogynist, I can't believe it. Or, man, this is really quite enlightened. But it's like, I don't know which one it is. It's kind of, do you know what I mean? It's
like,
it was hard to I don't know what to make of this. I don't know. I've got like that left wing confusion. Is it all right to enjoy this? Is it really all right? I don't know. It's kind of, but having said that, I don't really care. So, we've talked about several strong female characters. They passed the, what's it called? The Bechdel test. They're not talking about men at all, really. They're not interested. That's not what they're talking about. And we also then get, as I said, Margaret Hamilton going on about being a sex pot. Like, wow, interesting character again. I would have liked to have seen that character act almost like Kolchak's guide to the weird and wonderful. You know, a bit like, I'm not going to, you know, Captain Kronos has Grost, who knows all this, like, archaic stuff about vampires. I would have liked Kolchak to have, like, had this professor all through the series to go back to and talk about this, that, and the other. That would have been kind of cool, wouldn't it?
That would, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that would have worked. Meanwhile, basically he's trying to track down this thing, and women, unfortunately, Charisma Beauty gets it, right? The weird growly guy. And I mean, some of the elements was a bit like a rerun of The Night Stalker in those parts. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it was kind of like that. One of the things I really want to talk about, though, is the more direct connection to the X-Files. Because that's what we're here for, really, the X-Files. Right? He, with the help of, like, this news guy, who sits in his office among all his books, wearing one of them, like, almost like card dealer's hats, you know, to keep the light off his eyes so while he's reading newspapers. They start working out that there's been these rash of murders also are mirroring a set of murders in 1952. So this is set in 73, so this is 21 years before.
Yeah.
And then they stumble on the fact that there was another set of murders 21 years before that. And that leads them on to checking every 21 years back. And they get right back to 1889, right? So this has been, and it always happens over a period of 18 days, and it's always the same number of people. And from this, I can't quite work out how he did this. He works out that this guy believed in an elixir of life. Don't they find some sort of correspondence from Mark Twain talking about he met this soldier who's claimed he'd found the elixir of life, and that's what it leads from. Is that
yes?
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how they managed to kind of come across that, because obviously this day and age researching must have been such a bally.
Yeah, it was.
So I have no idea how they found that kind of tenuous link. But
Well, he had the newspaper guy doing it all. That was quite a good plot twist, because it didn't mean Kolchak, because Kolchak ain't a guy to sit and go through loads of books.
Yeah.
You see, he always gets other people to do that kind of stuff. So that kind of, and they work out it was this guy, Dr. Richard Malcolm, who was a surgeon in the Union Army during the Civil War, and he's one of the original staffs of this hospital, and now there's a clinic on the site based on him. They find an old picture of him, right? And then they find the same picture as an oil painting in this place, but in that one, it was Dr. Malcolm Richards, so it's Richard Malcolm on Malcolm Richards. You know, he's using a kind of a bit of a pseudonym. But, you know, it's a really, really obvious one. So there's all that going on. Essentially, they then go into the old... him and Louise Harper go into old Seattle, right? Which has got this amazing underground city that Seattle's been built over. I wasn't sure how true this was. I think there's a hint of truth in it. I think there is some sort of underground thing in Seattle. But this looked pretty extensive, didn't it?
yeah, I thought that.
It reminded me a bit of in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, where the astronaut goes under the ground and finds this like ruined New York. It reminded me a bit of that. It was kind of cool. I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked the idea.
liked it. Had a kind of Phantom of the Opera vibe as well.
Good catch. But while him and Louise Harper are down there, they encounter this old tramp that's Grandpa Munster, right? It's Al Lewis.
Yeah.
Awesome little scene, and there's this great little bit of comedy dialogue. So he goes, "Oh, my rheumatism, my ingrained toenails, my feet, my ankle, my varicose veins. Oh, and I'm getting a migraine." And Louise goes, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "Sure, I'm fine." It's kind of then he pulls out a bottle of whiskey and starts drinking it. It's kind of funny. And Kolchak gives him some money. Says, "If you see anything weird, let me know." And we do see him a bit later. Anyway, I skipped over the old X-Files bit. This whole 21-year cycle, what's it reminds you of in the X-Files?
This reminds me of Tombs.
Tombs is definitely riffing on this. Definitely. All right, so he's not taking blood, but he's taking livers, right? So it's kind of stealing something so he can keep living, right, and re-emerge. Is it 18 years, Toombs, or is it? It's not 21, is it? So I think it's slightly less. But anyway, it's a significant number of years, and it's on a repeating cycle that's like you can work backwards and work out. So so Toombs, which is like only episode 3 of season 1, right? Is definitely riffing on this. This is probably, I think, one of the most directed. You know, where you can say this episode was influenced by this specific thing, and I'm talking about Kolchak, really, in a very direct way. Kolchak's more the vibe. When we talk about the influence, it's more the vibe in the main, isn't it? But this one has a much more direct influence, so that was kind of cool. And it's a great. Toombs is a great. I mean, is it? No, it's not called Toombs, is it? That it's
the episode is Squeeze, but the character. I meant, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So that was kind of cool. Now Kolchak then goes back underground on his own. He don't care, does he? He's really unprepared. He just kind of wanders around, and he finds this weird, like, table of desiccated corpses, right? Like a little room, bit Texas Chainsaw Massacre-y, wasn't it? That kind of weird stuff.
But this actually preceded that, didn't it?
It did, yes, it did. And this scene always makes me think of, there's an episode of Red Dwarf when they first meet Crichton, and he's like been looking after these women, but they're all like skeletons, but he doesn't realise they're all dead. It just makes me think of that. I know I shouldn't, but...
bit of a psycho vibe as well for me.
Yeah, there was. Before we get to all that, though, there's been lots of screaming and shouting between Kolchak and Vincenzo, and Kolchak and the police chief. And I mean, the police chief's going, "This is rotten yellow journalism," and all this. And like, he's been dragged up to the office several times. You know, John Carradine's shouting at him, and all this. And he's saying, "No, this is true story," and all this. And I do remember one point, Kolchak gets stroppy and he says, "Yeah, I've been police chief 37 years. He's getting really cross. There's a lot of cross shouting. It's very funny. I think in some ways there's certain scenes in this is better. You know, the writing's better than even the Night Stalker, actually.
I totally agree, actually, yeah. I think the characters themselves are more defined in this particular film, and the actors seem to be just having a ball with them.
They're not as angry, right? Kolchak and Vincenzo are not as angry at each other, are they? There's a bit more layering to it than that. They're kind of bit of give and take. Though at one point Kolchak does throw something through Vincenzo's window. He gets so angry. It made me laugh. And more than once, Kolchak says, "Oh man, this feels really familiar." You know, the authorities sort of denying stuff, not listening to me, and all this. It's kind of it made me laugh. It did make me laugh. I really enjoyed this one, actually. It basically comes face to face with the guy who's. This was a bit odd, right? Because he was like beastly up until now, but then he turns into this well-spoken guy.
Suave.
he's the stairs don't go all the way up to the attic though, right? He's definitely unhinged somewhat.
Yeah.
He's like talking to corpses, saying, "Should we let him talk to us?" Yes, let's. It's a bit of talking to himself business. He's kind of gone mad. So presumably he's alive and operating between his 18-year periods. He's not gone dormant, but because he's like immortal, he just does normal stuff. But when he starts rotting, he turns bestial, I think is the implication. It wasn't quite as well laid out as I would have liked, actually, because he was so smooth, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a little bit strange, and I couldn't work out whether he spends all his time down there, which wouldn't really make sense, because like you say, once he's regenerated, he's got 21 years, of life. So I don't see why he'd stay down there. Yeah, but he seems to be so far gone. But unless, like you say, it's that period of time where not only potentially is his body decomposing, but his mind's kind of deteriorating too.
It could be that too. Yeah, he does seem unaware there's a clinic with his name on it above them. He kind of acts like he's not aware of that, right?
Yeah.
Which is odd. And he starts explaining to Kolchak he's refining the process and he's hoping to perfect it and all this, that and the other. And Kolchak's like, Okay, he just wants to live, right? Because more than once it looks like the guy's about to kill him. But he realises he's making the last batch. So Kolchak, was it an ashtray he picks up, or some sort of heavy bottle or something? Throws it right into the chemical equipment, right, and smashes it up, which means he doesn't get his last elixir. And the guy goes mad and starts acting beastly. Now, I just wanted to mention the guy who plays Richard Malcolm is a guy called Richard Anderson, which I know this guy really well because he was one of the main characters in the show called The $6 Million Man, which was a really cool... When you're a boy... That it was such a cool show, but I can't recall seeing him in anything else other than this and the $6 Million Man.
Wasn't there a McGavin in that as well?
Which one? $6 Million Man?
Yeah.
Not as far as I know.
Wasn't he in the original pilot?
I don't believe so. I don't remember. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
I'm sure I read that somewhere.
Well, you might be right. I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't think I've seen the pilot since it was on, and that was 1976. So,
wow.
So, something like that. Anyway, so it was quite a long time ago. I'm going to check it now you said it. You can be intrigued. So you might have to do some talking, all right? So there was a lot to like about this suit. I mean, I really thought it was kind of interesting how the women characters were significant.
Yes. And,
they weren't just like furniture, they weren't just like ciphers.
No, not at all. And, I think the writing and the acting just, like you say, worked so well together to create that strange kind of dynamic where, like you say, we're not sure if it's misogynist or if it's, quite, celebration of these kind of female characters, and they're quite empowered in a lot of ways. So that was really interesting. And like I say, I really like the way this film fleshed out Kolchak's character in particular. I mean, he's still egotistical, he's still chauvinist, but he's a really... I've mentioned before about Perry Mason and Columbo, and he has that kind of that he feels like he's better than other people, and he acts like that around the rest of the news team. And I love the fact that he's like a terrier when it comes to the story he wants, and that must be why I'm guessing he's been sacked from several jobs from the way the kind of the narrative hints. But I think at one point he's told he's been taken off the case and he has to cover a daffodil show. Is it a daffodil festival?
Yeah, and he gets really annoyed, doesn't he? He gets
and then we get that wonderful, bit of monologue where it's like, it's a shame not to be able to go to wherever it was in the middle of nowhere to cover the daffodil festival. But
doesn't
he goes
he
out and does a
pretend
bit
he's
of,
been there? I'm trying to remember now. Does he pretend he's been there?
And then he goes to do a bit of sleuthing himself, and he keeps asking the police force if he can use some of the female officers as bait, which again really added to the whole kind of gender politics debate.
Yeah, there is a whole sequence where he sends Louise Harper out and follows her, right? And he looks really dodgy because they get arrested, don't they? The cops pull him in, and he has to go and shout at more people for a bit. I'm making it sound trivial, but it is good fun. But essentially, let's go back to the end. He kind of smashes up the test tubes, and the guy starts going nuts. But he starts aging rapidly. And at first, I thought that's a different actor. But I wasn't sure actually, because the aging makeup was kind of okay, but obviously some sort of weird head mask, right?
Yeah.
And then finally the police burst out. They turn up, they just turn up. But the guy throws himself down a vent. And then again, Kolchak kind of gets fired. This time Vincenzo kind of has to fire him. He kind of led him that last way. But this time Vincenzo also gets fired. And for some reason, Louise Harper also gets kicked off her course. I don't understand that, but it ends with them driving, both Vincenzo and Kolchak driving out of town, arguing still. But then she's in the back seat and she starts nagging him really badly. And it just ends with this rowing, right? driving off from Rowan. It's fun. It's fun. Really fun. It's a shame that character didn't get into the series, actually.
Yeah, and that was a really nice ending because in regards to Kolchak and Vincenzo was going to print the story, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And that's the reason why, because he did back
he did. Also,
Kolchak.
Doesn't he actually say, Kolchak, Carl, you're a hell of a reporter?
That was in the end of the first episode, the first film.
It was a similar vibe, though, wasn't it?
It really was, yeah. And I think he's kind of pissed off at him that he, went out on a limb because obviously he believes him, and that was a bit of a Skinner moment for me, more so than a Scully moment.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well, it did sort of try to Skinner. Right, so this was like the second movie. I did mention there was a third. They kind of was thinking about a third movie, but then they sort of transitioned in. We'll do a series instead. But I've just found the notes about the third movie, which I think ties in even more to the X-Files kind of stuff. Get this, right? It was entitled The Night Killers, set in Hawaii, and this had Vincenzo hiring Kolchak again to work for him. And Kolchak discovers a cover-up, right? This time involving a UFO, a nuclear power plant, and important people being murdered and replaced by androids.
Wow.
And it ties up, Kolchak believes aliens on a UFO landed on Earth, intending to set up a colony and replacing key government figures with androids to assist them in building their colony. How about that?
That would have been
so
awful.
X-Files, isn't it? It sounds... Unfortunately, they don't do anything like that in the series, so that kind of plot got lost completely. Sounds quite ambitious and probably quite expensive.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? So maybe that's why they just jettisoned it. I'm just trying to think, we had any other cameo. Cameos is probably not the right word, but any other sort of famous characters pop up. No, that was it, really. It was Margaret Hamill, John Carradine, and Hal Lewis, really. Really enjoyable. Really, really enjoyed this one. What would you give this one out of 10?
Oh, 10, definitely.
Really? I'm going to say an 8.
Really?
I did prefer The Night Stalker. I think The Night Stalker's kind of iconic, but I did enjoy this one a lot more than the last time I watched it, and it really has grown on me quite a bit. And I think because there's a lot more comedy in it.
Yeah, and the rewatchability kind of factor, I could easily stick this on and anytime happily and watch it.
Yeah, and it was fun, and it had a kind of segment feel, didn't it? Let's go and see Al Lewis down in the sewers. Or let's go see Margaret Hamill and talking her stuff up and all this, that, and the other. I mean, I haven't talked about it much, but that Margaret Hamill, apart from like making a comment about being a sex pot, that was funny. She did explain like the nature of alchemy and stuff like that. It was kind of cool. That was kind of interesting. I liked all that. And like I say, I could have seen her coming back as like Kolchak's go-to when he wants to find out about weird stuff. Yeah, that would have worked quite well, and I'd have been happy with that each week. That would have been fun. Okay, let's wind out there. So next time on the X-Files, we're going to be bringing you 2 more episodes of the X-Files. I think it's episode 21 and 22 of season 3. And the week after, the time after that, we'll be starting the Kolchak the Night Stalker TV series. Probably the first 4 episodes of that. So, plenty going on, right, Becky?
As always.
Yeah. So bye from me.
Bye from me.
And remember, they're watching.
I'd rather be